Hi, I'm Chris Cinnamon, and I'm delighted to be here today with Paul Cavel via Zoom. Paul brings 30 years of teaching of Tai Chi, Qigong, and related practices to us. He's a senior instructor in the energy arts system, one of 3 instructors only that is authorized by Master Bruce Francis to certify other instructors in the system. So he's helping carry the baton of that lineage. Paul's the author of 2 books, Tai Chi Space, How to Move in Tai Chi and Qigong, released in 2017. And in 2020, Heaven and Earth Qigong, Heal Your Body and Awaken Your Qi, Volume 1, co-authored with Master Bruce Francis. Paul's also the principal of the Tai Chi Space, offering in-person instruction in California and London, and also a number of self-paced online programs. This October, for the first time, Paul will be leading a workshop here in Chicago, here at Chicago Tai Chi. We're very excited about that. So, Paul, one focus of your teaching is Qigong. And for those that might not be familiar, what is Qigong?
Well, there's an easy answer and a more complex answer. But the easy answer is it's energy work. Qigong translates as energy work. And energy work means working with the qi of the body. So the purpose is to bypass the physical components, your muscles, your bones, and get to the qi that drives the body. But when I say bypass, it's not to leave behind or to ignore. It's through the physical body that you access your qi. But a lot of people, when they're learning Qigong, they get stuck in the realm of, oh, what's my arm doing? What's my hand doing? Which way am I facing? So they get stuck in that physical reality. But all of the physical components of Qigong are there to take someone deeper in and to access their qi. And qi just translates to energy. So you're looking for the energy behind your physicality, the energy that runs your physicality. And so Qigong is a method of tuning into, contacting and working with the energy of the body. And Qigong is also an overarching principle of energy movement or energy work or energy development. And that's split into 2 categories. So this is where we get a little bit deeper in. There's Wei Gong and Neigong. And Wei means outer and Nei means inner. So there's different aspects of Qigong, and there's very superficial aspects of Qigong, and there's really deep aspects of Qigong. So if you talk about Qigong, well, there's apparently over 200,000 systems of Qigong that have come out of the East. So that's a large array of possibilities. And some of those Qigongs are, like I say, they're very superficial. They just work the muscles of the body and making the muscles of the body strong. And others take you into your core essence. So these are, extreme opposites of the work with Qigong.
And you mentioned Neigong, which is also a focus of your teaching. So for those that might not be familiar, what's Neigong?
Neigong is deep energetic development. It's the deeper aspects of Qigong. And when you're discussing Neigong, you're discussing the specific threads of developing the energies of the various systems of the body. Your cardiovascular system, digestive, your nervous system, lymphatic system, all the various systems of the body and all the subsections or subsystems of the body, all the way down to the cellular activity of the body. So Neigong is a more in-depth, more precise, more focused form of Qigong in a way.
So you mentioned Neigong threads, and that's a metaphor I've heard you used often. And the separate threads are then woven together. Give us an example of one Neigong thread.
There's an array. There's basically 16 threads. One that really grabs people's attention a lot is the open and closing of the body's joints, soft tissues, cavities, subtle energy anatomy, organs. And this is a pulsating rhythm that goes through your body and through the various layers of your body. And pulsing is a rhythm of life. You can see a very obvious pulse in a jellyfish moving through water. You can see an obvious pulse in the beating of the heart. And then there are longer pulses, like if you look at time-lapse photography on the Arctic or Antarctic ice caps. They shrink in the summer and they grow in the winter. So that's a long pulse, yes? And then of course you've got the trees. The trees grow and produce leaves, and then the trees drop their leaves. So the tree takes one in-breath through the year, banking carbon dioxide, and one out-breath when it drops its leaves. So that's a long pulse. And talking of breathing, your breath is a pulse. You breathe in and your lungs expand, and you breathe out and your lungs shrink. So this is a pulse. So pulsing is a rhythm of life. And when people's bodies stop pulsing, they get all sorts of problems. So the purpose of the Neigong thread or component of pulsing is to strengthen, re-establish and balance the pulses in the human body at all levels.
One of the Qigong sets we practice in the energy art system, Heaven and Earth Qigong, particular interest of yours. One of the Neigongs emphasizing that set is pulsing.
Yes, it is.
And that, and Heaven and Earth is what you'll be teaching here in October.
Yes, it is.
In your teaching and your writing, you emphasize the water method. Practices and an approach to practice that has roots in ancient Taoism. So tell us about the water method.
The term water method comes from 𝗪𝘵 in the Tao Te Ching, when he talked about a soft approach towards training and personal development, and not pushing, forcing and straining. And the water is a metaphor because water has no will of its own. The water will fall in the sense of rain coming down. It will gather into streams and into rivers and into the sea. So it follows the path of least resistance, and it collects in the lowest places, and it becomes stable and still. And so if water is left alone, water will become very still. But obviously, if water is moving through, coming down the mountains, it will come through and it will avoid the strong and it will overpower the weak. And this is a metaphor for eroding the blockages within a person, to release the energy that is bound in their body and to allow that energy to circulate and help that individual become very healthy. So water method practice takes the strain out of the work. And if you take an individual that's going into the Olympics, they are pushing and they are forcing their body to their absolute pinnacle of ability, which they reach at a certain point. The whole training is to bring them to that point at the right moment in time. But it is not sustainable. And so the water method didn't try to make these peaks and then these drops from these peaks, like a boxer trains for a particular fight. And then he trains down from that fight after. And so there's these peaks and plateaus. And the water method is there to have this constant elevation of a human being's capacity. And it's done mainly through the application of what we call the 70% rule, or I refer to that as the rule of thirds, because 2/3 of your effort is around 70%. And if you put in around 2/3 of your effort, you're not being lazy, yes, and yet you're not straining your system, and you always have a reserve. If you look at people that run the marathons, they run a marathon and then they're exhausted and they need some days or weeks off after that marathon to recover. Well, this is great for a peak performance, but as in developing a human being, as in building vitality, lifelong vitality, longevity, this isn't a good method. So the water method is a way of taking you into training that benefits and allows a human being to continue to improve, continue to increase their capacity into their old age, rather than hitting a peak at some point and then coming down from that peak for the rest of their days.
Well, you're also describing modes of training to a peak that are also associated with regular bodily injury.
Absolutely. Often people push themselves beyond their ability and beyond their capacity. And for everybody that's in the Olympics, there are some thousands of people behind them that didn't make it because of injury, strain, internal resistance to training because they push their systems too hard, too quick. It's generally the genetically strong and the very strong-willed that get to that point. And to give a crossover into our realm, there's these amazing Shaolin monks, and they travel the world and they show these demonstrations, and they're incredibly fit and strong, and they can do all sorts of things, one-finger push-ups. I mean, you know, they can do all sorts of things. But for every one of these individuals, there are literally thousands behind them that just didn't make it from one reason or another. And a lot of it's internal resistance, because if you force your body, if you force your mind and your emotions, there's a very big pushback. Yes? So I would say that internal resistance to training through force and push is probably number one, and number two is injury, of why people don't get there. And if you're looking at that, I mean, what's the reason for your training? Yes? Is it to win a race, or is it to develop health and vitality? You know, and most of us are in, well, we'd like a little bit more longevity, and not only the longevity, but being healthy, aware, awake, and active through that.
A wonderful term in exercise physiology is health span. So we have a lifespan and a health span, and the objective is to get the health span as close, the end of the health span, as close to the end of the lifespan as you can, so you have more years of, you know, functional movement in relatively pain-free existence.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, and your discussion of the water method certainly aligns with that.
Yeah, the water method's trying to bring those two things to increase together. Yes? So you become healthier. And you see this because there's quite a lot of old Chinese people that have done Tai Chi or Qigong for their lifespan. And they're in their 80s, their 90s, 100. They're still alive. They can still produce raw physical power. They do push hands with young men and throw them around. Yes? And you don't often see people in the external martial arts or Western sports in their 80s, 90s, or 100s having that kind of fitness, awareness, and presence.
Great examples. I'd like to turn now to another theme in your teaching. One way we could describe Tai Chi and Qigong movement is smooth, flowing movement. And people see Tai Chi and they see that external quality to it, and also in a number of types of Qigong. In your teaching, you emphasize structure first and then flow. Talk to us about that.
These are the two aspects, yeah, the structure, the container, and then the flow and the Qi work. And if you have one or the other, you don't really have Qigong, right? Because if you have the structure but no flow, then it's just mechanical. If you have the flow but there's no container for it, well, then you could develop Qi, but you leak it. So if you think of a heating system that uses water, that heats water and sends the water around to the radiators that then put heat into the room. If those pipes are not connected up and sealed, when you turn on the flow of water, it just leaks everywhere. The structure is there to contain the internal work and the Qi development. And if you don't have the structure, then the Qi development will not really be gathered and contained within the body. Now, if you start with the structure and the focus on the specific components of how the body turns, where it turns from, what the alignments of the body are, how to initiate the stretches to within 70% of your capacity, and all of these things, you start to circulate blood and Qi from the get-go. It may not be the main event at that level of the practice, but it will initiate blood and Qi circulation, which will slowly grow and develop your Qi. And therefore, you get benefit from that from the very beginning. Now, let's go to this side of the fence again. Let's say you start to develop a sensitivity to Qi and you start to move some Qi through your system, but you have no structure. Well, you don't have a systematic way to open up the depths of the body, because your mind subconsciously will avoid the stuck places in the body. So it will never open those up and you will never develop all the way through to the core. And you can see this with people. If a man drops his keys from his right hand and he turns and he picks it up with his left hand, why did he do that? He wasn't conscious of turning. He just picked it up with his left hand because he has a sticky right hip and he knows that when he bends down to the right, it's uncomfortable for his body. So he automatically switches to the left side and picks it up, right? And we're doing this 24/7. How we sleep, how we move, we're avoiding all of these unconscious blockages in our body. When you have a systematic method and you balance everything left and right, first in the structure and then in the movement, you dredge up these stagnancies and these blockages and these stuck places in the body. And as you open those up smoothly and slowly over time, your Qi will develop stronger and stronger. Yes? So these are some of the reasons why I emphasize structure first. But there are times that I emphasize flow first. For instance, if we are going into a specific Qi practice, like with Dragon and Tiger's use of the etheric field, I will emphasize the flow first and the structure second, because that's how that specific Qigong is developed. Yes? Whereas the deeper Neigong is structure and then flow.
Paul, you mentioned Dragon and Tiger Qigong. For those that might not be familiar with Dragon and Tiger Qigong, can you give us an overview of what that's about?
Sure. Dragon and Tiger is an outer meridian medical Qigong system. So it affects the 𝗿𝗁𝗁𝗁 of the body, and the 𝗿𝗁𝗁 and the etheric field generate your buffer to the world to prevent negative energies, and it also diminishes the effect of pathogens coming into your system. So it's all about developing this outer layer of qi and creating a strong buffer zone to the environment. And it's closely related with acupuncture. So it's built off a very similar principle as acupuncture, where you open up the meridian lines and that strengthens the flow of qi and clears up stagnancies, or I should say releases stagnancies, helps to clear up illnesses and helps to heal injuries. So this is the basic look at a dragon and tiger as an outer meridian, medical qigong.
Oh, let's jump to your books. So your first book, The Tai Chi Space, How to Move in Tai Chi and Qigong, is, I love this book for many reasons, including the chapters are very short. So it's, easily readable. It's delightful illustrations by Sophie Manem. And in the book, you identify 42 principles of how to move in Tai Chi and Qigong. And my question is, how did that come to you?
Well, it's a distillation, if you will, of many years of practice. I noticed in my practice, I would focus upon these things, and in my teachings, I would focus upon these things because they're like the critical points that allow the internal arts to take root in the body. And so when I was teaching, I was noticing, I keep using this, I keep using this, I keep using this. And so initially we were looking at building a lexicon because people don't really understand what's within the internal arts. And so they don't know how to discuss it. They don't know the questions to ask. They don't know the material that's behind it, the philosophy. And so I wanted to put down something that was very simple to understand and yet would allow people to ponder and to mull over certain aspects of practice that in my own practice has really opened up some very interesting work, yes? And my own teacher, our teacher, Bruce, he would, and he still does to this day, he will drop certain keys into the training. And so over the years, I saw these gems, these keys, if you will, or these principles, and I kept applying them. And as I apply them in my own practice, and not just once, you don't just go, okay, circularity, all right, so I'm moving in circles, great, what's next? You really dive into, well, what about circularity? Where's the circularity? Where isn't circularity? And if you go down and down and down and down and down, there's nowhere there is not circularity in the internal arts, right? So where am I using circularity? Where am I not using circularity? And then that takes you into stuck spaces again, stagnancies, and allows you to eradicate those, which then elevates your whole game, yes, and elevates your whole health and vitality, and flexibility, and softness, and being comfortable in your body, yes, because those deeper spaces that are stuck, bound, and clogged up, they're the ones that give you hassle.
I'd like to look at an example of one of your principles, and it's, the metaphor is delightful. It's cultivate the arts. And you describe the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of growth and harvesting. And then within cultivating the arts, you mentioned separate and combine.
Mm-hmm.
A phrase I've heard much in your teaching. So what is this principle of separate and combine as it's applied to Qigong and Tai Chi?
Separate and combine is not unique to Qigong and Tai Chi, but not many people actually use it in their daily lives. Yes, if you're an engineer, all you do is separate and combine. You take that machine to pieces, you see what's broken, you fix that piece, you upgrade that piece, you put it back together. It works better, maybe, maybe not, but you run the experiment. If it does, you keep going down that road. I mean, this is how all the Formula One racing cars are built. They rebuild the car, they put it on the track, they get 1/10 of a second off the lap, and they're like, oh, we're onto something here. And they keep going and keep going and keep going. And it's insane where they've got to. And a lot of that eventually finds its way into the cars that everybody drives on a daily basis. It is the foundation of development for the motor vehicle. Okay, so this is one example. So when we do separate and combine in the internal arts, we take it down to the nuts and the bolts. So again, we're looking at this, developing the structure, yes? How well is your waist turn? How good is your weight shift? How accurate do your alignments remain in the body in motion? Because aligning the body correctly is one thing. Keeping the body aligned through complex motion is another thing, right? So, if your baseline of your alignments is poor, everything can only get worse from there. It's not going to get suddenly better when you do more complex work, yes? So then also an arm movement, a hand movement, a pulse, for instance. How strong is the pulse? Is the pulse throughout the entirety of your body? Is it only in the upper body? Or is it only in your hands? Yes? So when you separate something, you can see it for what it is. You can develop it. You can improve it. You can take it into the body where it's supposed to be, but it isn't present. And then you recombine that back into your form or your forms, depending on whether it goes in just one place or whether it goes throughout all practices. And this continuous separating and combining over years is what develops really good practice. And so now, why was that term put in the cultivation? Because this is poking at the cultivation again, isn't it? These days, I see it, you know, someone presses the download button on their phone and 3 seconds later they're having a hissy fit because they haven't got their download. 3 seconds, right? Maybe 2, and they're already upset about it. So it's like, that's not a long period of time, and we are being conditioned into really short time frames. But this material was developed thousands of years ago, right? So they didn't have computers and technology, and they literally had to wait, right, for the plants to grow and produce the fruit that they would then eat. So that was a different era. And this also is really opening that door to patience, isn't it? Because not much gets done if you're impatient. An impatient mind will not stay the course. And so you need to develop patience, you need to have the perspective of cultivating the arts, not doing it once and going, well, why aren't I healed? Yes. I mean, it's a process, yes. And the use of separate and combine is what's going to allow you to continue to develop that process for many, many years and get better and better fruit. The same as some of the olive trees are thousands of years old in Greece and Spain, right? And they've been there and cultivated, and the people there have cultivated those trees, and they give abundant fruit now. But they didn't in their first year or 2 or 5, right? So there's this whole process of cultivating and the correct way of cultivating the arts to get the most out of your practice. And then, of course, when I'm saying that you're stripping it down to the nuts and the bolts, there are some nuts and bolts that are generic to all movements, like a weight shift or a turning or an arm movement, whatever. But there's also very specific nuts and bolts within each of the Neigong threads. So with pulsing, it's like, is the pulse in the hands? Is it also in the elbows, the shoulders, the rib cage, the hips, the spine, the knees, the ankles, the feet? And once you've done your joints, are you now going to get the pulse in deeper to the body? Yes. If you're looking at qi flows, is the qi flow superficial? Is it on the skin? Is it in the Wei Qi? Is it in the etheric field? Is it in the meridian lines? Is it in the muscles? Is it all the way through to the bones? Is it in the core of the bones? Is it through the organs and the brain? Is it in the central channel? So again, there's all these layers and aspects to each one of these Neigong, and it is going into the Neigong and going into the nuts and bolts of each Neigong that eventually accumulates into this woven fabric. Yes, this use of this weaving again and threads. And if you just do a superficial contact to all of these Neigong threads, you're just sitting on the surface of the water. But the ocean is deep and it is broad. And so when we're talking about separating and combining and going into the nuts and the bolts, we're talking about literally going through all the systems, subsystems of the body, all the layers of energy, and eventually through the emotions, through the mind. Yes? This is very deep work. And it is something that if you put in the time, that it yields a lot. Yes? But again, if you're just skimming around on the surface, or if you're just having a look at this and having a look at that, the benefits are very superficial.
That's great, Paul. One other element in cultivating the arts you identify is cyclic training.
Cyclic training, or the circular nature of learning, yes, is the fact that you're not just moving forward like time. Time is just constantly moving forward, constantly in one direction, in towards the future, yes? Time does not suddenly go back into the past. So, if you're training and you only go up the layers, oh, I've done this and then I go on to this and now I'm here and oh, I'm into this and I hear this in the courses, oh, well, I'm doing the advanced whatever. And that's all very good. But if you only go forward in that way, you will hit a glass ceiling. And that glass ceiling is there because your foundation isn't strong enough. So if you're building a pyramid and you want the capstone to touch the heavens, the base has to be so wide and so deep for that pyramid to reach the heavens. Okay? So rather than climbing a ladder, which is very unstable, you're building that pyramid. And if you were to just stay in the bottom layer of the practice, always, you don't stretch yourself. You don't discover new aspects. You don't bring some excitement and interest to the practice. So you need to do the base material, but then you also need to move forward into the more advanced material to the point where you feel, oh, I'm losing the thread here. You know, it's really not working for me. And then you loop back to the beginning again and you go through that. Now, every time you go through this loop, and you come back to the beginning, you have the opportunity to eradicate what is holding you back, whether it's a stuck place in the body or whether it's an aspect of the Neigong that's not alive in your body or whatever. And as you improve those aspects, the foundation gets stronger, and that allows you then to move into more advanced material. But again, you don't just go forward again, you come back again and again. And so as you keep going through this loop, it's not a circle, it's a spiral. And as you come back to the beginning of that circle, you've gone that little deeper into your body. And so it shows up some more material that needs your focus. So for me, both as a practitioner and as a teacher, I've been through this. At some point, I can't remember now, a couple of decades back, I made the decision, I'm not just going to move forward into more interesting material, and then skip to another subject because it's new and exciting, yes? I was going to go into more depth. And I thought when I made this shift in my teachings, rather than doing 1 or 2 seminars in this subject and then go into another subject and doing 1 or 2 seminars, because that's skipping around and then continuously changing what you're working on is very helpful for getting people interested in the work and bringing people into the classroom. But it doesn't do that much for developing this material in its depth. So I made the choice to, no, I'm going to go into each aspect a lot deeper, take more time. And I did 15 one-day seminars on Dragon and Tiger. And I was surprised, 2 things happened. One, the bulk of the people stayed with it because they had familiar ground, they were developing the work, and they were getting better results, even though I was recycling through the same material again and again and just adding pieces that would, you know, take it the next step in the game. When I did that, I had this whole thing. About 50 or 70% of the next seminar was review and deepening the previous work, and only 30 to 50% was new. And the class size doubled. So that showed me 2 things. The people were getting more from it and they were more willing to engage. And so I've been on that track since. So when I teach, I go into the depths of something rather than the breadths, because it's the breadth that makes it interesting and exciting, because it's the new, yes? So going into the depth and spiraling into these basic components is really what sets the foundation, and it's really what allows a practitioner to grow, develop, and reach a higher place. And there's a parallel here. It's like the 70% rule. If I do to 70% of what I can do today, it's nowhere near what I could do if I went to 100% in a particular practice. But if I go to 100%, I build a glass ceiling and I stay there. And if I go to 70%, over time, that 70% range increases and goes past that 100% of what I can do today. Yes? And I'm also building my reserves, staying within my 70% of effort. So that's building my longevity as I'm going down the road. And if you don't keep going back to the beginning, again, you hit that glass ceiling because you're just moving into more advanced material and eventually you can't hold it. You're just not prepared for it.
So you describe evolution in your teaching and also in your own practice. So in your personal practice, what's your favorite?
I would say that shifts and changes and morphs. So let me put it to you like this. I do a lot of different practices and I do a lot of different Neigong within those practices. So in a single day, I cannot practice everything. That would be mental. 24 hours isn't enough. Okay? So therefore, well, what do I practice? So I focus on something for a period of time. And these periods are like maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year, sometimes 2 years if it's a long cycle, if it's got real depth to it and I need a long cycle. So I'll focus on a particular practice for a period of time. And then I'll do other practices a little bit just to keep them like on the back burner. You know, you boil, the potatoes are now boiling, you put that on the small heat on the back and then you put something else on the front and now you get the curry going, okay, good. So you put something on the back burner and something's in the forefront of your mind with your practice. You're practicing that for a period of time. When I feel there's some solidity to that, when there's some kind of evolving whatever, some move forward, some solidity, or if I hit a plateau and it's like I don't seem to be able to take this aspect further at this point in time, then I will shift to another practice. So personally, I practice Yang style, Wu style, the various Neigong, Qigong, Bagua, the monastic and the martial tradition of the Bagua palms, and the meditation work. And again, you can't fit all that in a day. So what is the focus in the here and now? What's on the back burner? And then they change. And sometimes in that, I get a real love for a particular practice, but do it for a while, do it for a year, and then you'll be ready for a change. But it's not like I let go of the Tai Chi completely. I just put it on the back burner. It's just not my main focus, for instance, yes? And I'll maybe go deeper into the Bagua at that time, or deeper into one of the Neigongs at that time, yes? But I generally have some Neigong, some Tai Chi or Bagua, and some meditation in a practice day. This is how I personally choose to develop it. It's very personal. But if you don't drill down into things and you just do this today and that tomorrow, again, there's no development. Yes, there's no development. And the different aspects of the practice deliver different results. And so if you're doing a practice that will yield a specific result that you need, you find a love for that because there is a real connection and there's a real result from it. Yes? If it's a health issue, for instance, and you can overcome that health issue with that practice, once you've overcome that health issue, maybe your time is now better spent over here. Because in our system, as you know, it's integrated. So you'll find a lot of the basic Neigong in all the various practices. I'll give you one small personal experience. I practiced this material while I was rebuilding a house in France, and it was made out of granite, and there were hundreds of tons of granite in that building, and we took a massive chunk of that building down and rebuilt it because it needed it. It was going to fall down if we didn't, right? And so I built up a little bit of tension in my shoulders. And I remember going on retreat and my arms in heaven and earth didn't want to go up in the air. And I'm like, oh, this is all this physical work I've done, yes? And I did a week of 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝗀. And then I went and practiced heaven and earth and my arms just went up in the air. And I was like, all that tension dissipated. So this other practice released that tension that particular practice didn't get to. And yet that practice affected my heaven and earth in a real positive way. And of course, heaven and earth is a precursor to 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝘀. So whatever you do here benefits the 𝗵𝘂𝗶𝘀. And so these aspects just cycle into each other. They fold into each other. That doesn't happen in an unintegrated method.
Yeah, that's great, Paul.